You're very welcome back. You can tweet us at Off The Ball, or you can text us using the number 53106. It is time to talk NFL, and John Gonzalez of TheRinger.com joins us on the line. Good evening to you, John.
Hey, gang.
So let's start with Josh Gordon. He's been one of the names mentioned by everyone this week. He's an NFL wide receiver for anyone who doesn't know, and he's gone to the Patriots from the Cleveland Browns. But the big thing here, John, is the fact that Belichick, I think it's fair to say, is taking a chance on this guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Patriots tend to take some flyers on wide receivers that might have fallen out of favor with other teams for various reasons. They did it with Randy Moss. It worked out really well. They did it with Chad Ochocinco, nay Chad Johnson. Didn't work out so well. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes with Josh Gordon. He's an absolute physical monster, but he hasn't really played much over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, he had a really good season, and since then, obviously, he's had a lot of issues with substance abuse. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him in New England.
Yeah, when you speak of substance abuse there, it did seem that was something of the past. Like, I think most people will have seen, anybody who's into the NFL anyway, will have seen that interview he did with GQ last year where he spoke about getting over that addiction, and he spoke about actually managing that addiction, like using before matches and stuff like that, which was insane. But it seemed that he had been over that. Do we have any clarity as to what's happened over the last 6 months or so?
We don't, not really. He came back from the preseason pretty late, rejoined the team, wasn't in much of training camp because he said he was focused on his health and his well-being. And it seemed like the Browns were okay with that they were in the loop. And then I guess at some point along the way, they decided that they and Josh Gordon should probably part ways. And along come the New England Patriots and got a 5th-round pick for Josh Gordon, which frankly I'm kind of surprised they got anything for Josh Gordon after telegraphing that they were going to move on from him. But maybe New England was the perfect spot for him because, again, they have tried this before. They do need a wide receiver. And it could, physically, he has all the tools. It's just whether or not, with his mental health, his mental health and his substance abuse, whether he'll be able to do that.
Yeah, like what is the general view at the moment in terms of how the NFL deals with players who suffer from things like that, and particularly who perhaps have a past of substance abuse? Because we've seen in the last couple of weeks the terms like insider trading being used with a player, and like in the past, obviously, there's been far worse things that have been attached to players than substance abuse. Does the NFL kind of frown upon this more than they should do, given their checkered past with other things like domestic violence?
Yeah, I don't know about the league in general. It's kind of hard to pin down the league on any given topic. I mean, we talk about domestic violence or issues where players are protesting social inequality and social injustice during the national anthem to get their point across. And it seems like the league's all over the place on where they stand on certain things. With this, I'm sure that they would give a company line about, hey, we want, first and foremost for Josh Gordon to get healthy and to get better and to avoid having any relapses. I would guess with the New England Patriots that they did a fair amount of homework before trading for Josh Gordon. It didn't cost them a ton. 5th-round pick isn't, too exorbitant, but they could certainly use the help. And I'd be really surprised if they didn't, do a lot of background checks on Josh Gordon and feel, at least that there was a chance that they could incorporate him into the New England Patriots fold and that he'd be able to contribute.
Yeah, and also I think we might underestimate the Bill Belichick factor in all of that. Is there a chance that he turns this guy into an elite wide receiver and makes the whole deal involving a 5th-round pick look like an absolute mockery?
Yeah, it's possible. Sure. It's also possible that it doesn't work out at all. I mean, I think when this happened, I think that there was a reaction among people who follow the NFL and specifically Patriots fans where they went, well, of course, Bill Belichick will be able to fix Josh Gordon, as though Bill Belichick has some, as of previously unknown cure for, alcoholism or drug addiction. Bill Belichick's a really good football coach. I don't think Bill Belichick has anything to do with what happens with Josh Gordon off the field. That's going to be up to Josh Gordon and the people around him.
Yeah, but it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out over the next couple of weeks and months. We do want to move on and talk a little bit about kickers. They've been all over the news in the first 2 weeks of the NFL this season. 19 missed kicks on Sunday. It's not a great time to be an NFL kicker, John.
Early on, it feels like that's always the case in the season. Like last year, if you guys remember, the Chargers had massive issues with their kicker. Of course, the Chargers had more issues in week one, and it continues to be a problem. But this is sort of the way of the NFL where early on, certain kickers don't do well. They wash out. Teams bring in other kickers that were just sitting around looking for jobs that previously had washed out in other iterations and other seasons. And this cycle just sort of continues. Kickers are I don't know how you feel about it. Kickers are kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, like they are. Like the thing is, there is this sort of misconception that it's such a simple job, whereas actually the simplicity of it almost makes it a little bit more complicated. And particularly if you look at the Viking situation where they cut their rookie this week, like if you put that into any other position, I do wonder if they would have been cut. Like say Sam Darnold in his first pass this year, or even last year, just off the top of my head, like Kareem Hunt on the very first night of the season last year, he fumbles his first ball. Sam Darnold throws an interception with his first pass this season. Like, should a kicker be given as much patience as people in those positions? Like, do they get treated with a little bit more impatience, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
They do get treated with more impatience, but there's a reason for it, right? So quarterbacks and running backs are much harder to come by, quarterbacks being the most important position, running backs being absolutely vital. With kickers, there are just a ton of them out there, and there's not much patience for when guys can't. You're right. I mean, like, it seems like it's a super simple job, but what makes a good kicker is one you kind of don't pay attention to, right? Because he's out there doing his job. I think with kickers, though, there's an outsized impact on the game relative to their importance to the team. If you have a kicker who misses a big kick, even though he's, on the field for just a handful of plays, it has an outsized impact on the outcome of that game. Whereas, with quarterbacks and running backs and receivers and defensive players, they're on the field all the time and sometimes don't have as much of an impact as just a guy who goes out there and misses a 47-yard field goal.
Yeah, well, it is Daniel Carlson, the guy who's been cut from the Vikings this week. 5th round draft pick this season, but he missed 3 field goals in the 29-all game against Packers at the weekend. So our heart goes out to you, Daniel Carlson, our kicker this week. Let's do a kicker every week that gets cut, because it seems to be one every single week. Before we let you go, John, we need to ask you about Carson Wentz as a Philly fan. He's back this week. He was obviously, I'm sure your heart broke when he went down last season. Of course, your heart has been mended and has been leaping ever since after the Super Bowl win under Nick Foles. But is there a part of your heart that's aching for Nick Foles now? He's just going to be cast aside for the rest of the season.
Nick Foles had a good run. I think we need to remember that Nick Foles is a guy who was thinking about retiring, had been cut by the Rams and Jeff Fisher of all people, and then really absolutely caught fire in the playoffs in the Super Bowl and was integral. Played an amazing game. I was there. I was two rows off the field and saw the entire thing, and played one of the great games that I've ever witnessed in person or covering a game. But he's not Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is clearly a better quarterback than him. He's the number 1 quarterback on that team. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. The Eagles could absolutely use him because they're a little thin at the skill position, especially wide receiver, and the running backs are a little banged up. They need a little bit of a boost. This could be it. I think it's exciting for the Eagles. It's exciting for Carson Wentz. And probably Nick Foles knows that this is the way that it was going to work, and he's probably fine with it. He's a much better backup than he is your first primary starting option.
Right, okay. And has the playbook changed that much? Has Doug Peterson made a Carson Wentz playbook that he suddenly ripped up when he went down last year, or can both guys just really slot into whatever it is?
Yeah, they probably don't roll Nick Foles out as much. Carson Wentz tends to be a more mobile quarterback, and he can get more things going on the move than Nick Foles. But outside of that, a lot of the players are the exact same. Like you saw in the Super Bowl and in Week 1 when they ran the Philly special again, they still have those weird, aggressive, tricky plays in their bag, and they tend to run them with both quarterbacks.
Yeah. Like, I think in general, I think we can judge Carson Wentz, and like in decades to come, when we look back on Carson Wentz's career, I think he'll be judged very, very well for how he conducted himself during his time in the sidelines. There was no sulking, and I know this happened to him in North Dakota State, so he had a little bit of an experience in this, but he was very supportive of Nick Foles. He was very supportive of him, even though he watched his team go all the way to the Super Bowl and win the thing. He really kept his composure, and he's really a role model for anybody out there who have a bit of a setback in their sporting career.
Yeah, it had to be a little bittersweet, right? Because of course you want to root on your teammates, and they're guys that you're together basically all year. You're in OTAs and off-season conditioning, and then you're in training camp and preseason, and the regular season. It's a very long season, and I'm sure he wanted them to do well, and of course he wanted them to do well. But then for him to get so close to the playoffs and then suffer that injury, and then for them to win the Super Bowl, I'm sure that there's part of him that just wants to get out there as soon as possible and play and show that, the Eagles can get back to the Super Bowl and maybe win another title.
Are they going to get back there?
It's tough. It's tough to do it 2 years in a row. I mean, they're among the handful of favorites. The Rams certainly look really good. The NFC is wide open. It's really tough, but they're among the handful of favorites.
Yeah, well, they're up against the Colts this weekend, and Carson Wentz is back. John Gonzalez, TheRinger.com, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Always enjoy again. Thanks.
Hey, hope you enjoyed that latest offering from Off the Ball. If you want to subscribe, and you should, check out just up here. All our latest stuff is just down here. Generally, knock yourself out.